What's up, everybody? Garrett back here, and with the release of People Under the Stairs on 4K, it got me kind of thinking a little bit more about Wes Craven's library. I just watched the People Under the Stairs on that 4K from Scream Factory and did my review. I just did that the other day, and I was kind of like, you know what? I'm kind of in the mood for some more Wes Craven stuff. And it's been a while since I've kind of dove into his library. I'm always like a John Carpenter guy. I'm like, oh, John Carpenter's my favorite. His movies are so great. Then I started to dig a little bit deeper into Craven, and I was like, you know what? I like almost all of his movies to an extent. And then I kind of dawned on me, I'm like, you know what, maybe I can undertake a ranking, a Wes Craven ranking. That would be pretty cool. But as I started kind of figure it out, I'm like, okay, which movies do I put in here? So I decided I'm going only horror and only movies that he directed. So it's given me quite a bit of movies here. I have them all on physical media of some sort, so I'll be able to showcase them as I go down the line. So I'm going to start from like least to best. It's going to be interesting, guys, because, you know, I look at these and I say a lot of people are going to be like, well, this movie's better than this movie. It doesn't have to do with what's the best made. For me, this has to do with what I, enjoy the most, what I've watched the most, what I've gone back to. And I'll give you a little bit of a backstory on each pick as I kind of go through these. Now, I guarantee this is going to piss some people off. This is going to cause a little bit of controversy because I'm sure some of my picks are probably not going to be what you would have chose when it comes to Wes Craven and movies of his that you would have put more at the top of the list. So I have a lot to talk about here. So let's get this thing started really, really quick. Now, the first movie I'm going to pull off this is going to be the movie Chiller. Now, the reason I put this at the end was because I've only seen it on this DVD. This DVD is terrible quality. I really couldn't enjoy it. It was kind of dark and grainy. It just was never a good picture. So to me, it was one that I always started and I never could finish. So just out of that aspect alone, this is going to have to go dead last for me because I really just haven't had a fair chance to kind of check this thing out. And like I said, when I tried, I just kind of gave up. So I don't know much about this as far as how it ends. So I probably could have tried to rewatch it before I did this, but I know for a fact that I wasn't digging this the couple times I tried. So, and this was more like a made-for-TV movie anyways, which you'll see he's actually done quite a bit of those. So I'm not saying this is terrible. I'm just saying I never was able to get through it. Maybe one day I'll watch it. Maybe somebody will put this out on a nice version, and then we can kind of check it out in a better quality aspect. So again, it's coming in last on my Wes Craven ranking. All right, the next one is going to be his last one, and that is My Soul to Take. Now, I remember seeing this in theaters, and to be honest, when I saw it in theaters, I didn't hate it. I didn't absolutely hate the movie. I didn't love the movie, but it wasn't one that I was like, oh, that was like the worst thing I've ever seen. But I did go back and rewatch this last year for a show that Dead Pit and I were going to do, and then we kind of canceled it at the last second. Maybe we'll do it again someday, maybe next year, but I did rewatch My Soul to Take. I don't think any of these movies in here I hate more than anything. My Soul to Take, I mean, for his last movie and to see what other people did for their last movies, like people like Toby Hooper and stuff like that, this isn't that bad. It's just going to make the bottom of my list just because it's not one that I go back to often and I really, really love. So again, I don't hate it. I don't love it, but it's going to come next in my ranking. All right, now this next one is going to be another made-for-TV movie, and that is going to be Invitation to Hell. Now, this movie was a made-for-TV movie, again, very low budget, 80s, but it's not bad. It's actually pretty enjoyable. It's about a couple that this guy gets a new job, and then they kind of join a country club, similar to like what you see in like something like Society, I guess, but not with all that body horror or anything like that. But things just kind of hit the fan, and these people aren't what they seem. So pretty cool little movie. You actually get a young like Punky Brewster in this movie, which is cool. And you also get, I don't remember her name, but she was on like All My Children because my mother used to watch that growing up. So that woman was in here as well. So again, this isn't a terrible movie. I actually think this would be something I'd like to see maybe Vinegar Syndrome get a hold of. Maybe a partner label or Vinegar Syndrome puts it inside one of those like made-for-TV sets or something like that. But this one is one that I would like to see an upgrade for, and that is next on my list. All right, my next one is going to be one that I'm sure most people thought was going to be dead last because the movie is not that great of a movie. But for some reason, I actually find it charming. I don't know why. It's almost like not finished. It's a big ball of mess. But you'll kind of find out why I don't mind it as much. And that is going to be The Hills Have Eyes Part 2. Now look at what Arrow did for this movie. They gave it a nice set to kind of match Part 1. This is a fantastic set for a movie that really doesn't deserve a set like this. But, again, I know a lot of people hate this movie more than anything, but I love the characters of Hills Have Eyes, you know, the Michael Berryman character. I love all of that. So to have a sequel to that, even though it's not great, and it's kind of a big mess due to a lot of issues they had with production, and he kind of just did this as a favor, like he didn't really want to do this movie, but I do kind of have fun with this movie, even though there are a lot of parts that are very, very silly. But again, Hills Have Eyes 2, I'm assuming most people would have had this way, way down, probably the last on their list, but for me, this is coming in now in my ranking. All right, so this is still kind of the bottom half of the ranking here. And the next one is another one that I feel could have been way better than what it was. Now, is it god-awful? It's not great. There's a lot of scenes in it. When I saw this in the theater for the first time, I hated it. But when Scream Factory did the Blu-ray and I watched it again, I'm like, you know, there's parts of it that are kind of charming in a sense because it was like that late 90s post-Scream era. And that was Cursed. Now, I did a review on this when it came out. I would love to see the other edition of this movie, the one with like Skeet Ulrich. Like there was a whole nother cast that they kind of filmed with and then they got rid of and they redid the whole thing. So this was a mess from the beginning, but they were trying to take the mindset of the slasher genre like Scream and turn it on its head and kind of do the same thing for the werewolf genre, which was really, really cool as an idea. Sadly, it just didn't come out as great as they wanted it, but it has that feeling of like that post-Scream or like that late 90s, early 2000s feel in horror that I actually think is still kind of charming to this day. So that's why Curse is coming in now in my ranking. All right, so keeping to that kind of post-Scream feeling and era, my next one is going to be Scream 3. Again, I did a full Scream ranking. I don't remember where this one came. I said that part 3 and 4 are always a kind of neck and neck for me, where they place in my ranking when it comes to these movies, but Scream 3 is going to be next on this list. And then again, following right behind it is Scream 4. Like I said, these two can flip-flop all the time. They're kind of more on the bottom end of my favorite Scream movies. Not a terrible movie. It's just when it comes to the Craven movies, there's a lot more that I enjoy better than these ones. So again, this one is going to hit almost like this middle of the road of my Wes Craven ranking. So the next one's kind of a weird one. I don't know where this would fall for most people, but it's going to be 81 Swamp Thing. I always liked this movie as a kid. It had David Hess in it. It had Adrienne Barbeau. Like, I mean, I watched this thing as a kid, as a teenager, as an adult, and I like Swamp Thing. It's good for what it is. It's different because Swamp Thing was really portrayed very differently as a kid when I used to watch the show and the cartoon and stuff. So this movie was a little bit more raw, kind of had more of a dirty feel. So I really do enjoy Swamp Thing as well. So that's why this one's kind of in that middle of the road on this list. All right, so next up is another cool one. It's an early one, one that inspired things like Nightmare on Elm Street, and that is Deadly Blessing. So real cool movie, very different than what you usually see from him. Very cool. This is a great addition put out by Scream Factory. This has got a young Sharon Stone in here. Michael Berryman is in this as well. So very, very cool movie. It's about like a religious cult. One I definitely recommend you guys should check out if you haven't seen this one. Now, coming up next is going to be Scream 2, and I know this one is probably going to be higher on other people's lists towards the kind of top end, but when it comes to Scream, like, I don't think the sequels are really, really strong. I don't hate them, but again, I think that they just never lived up to what the first one did. This one was pretty good. I mean, I like the aspect of how they decided to kill her and all that stuff, so this one's not too bad, but that's why it's kind of at this middle of the road when it comes to my Craven ranking. All right, now this one is going to be one from the early 2000s, and that is going to be Red Eye. So this was one of his later films, and I actually loved this movie. I saw it in the theater. I thought it was great, suspenseful, tense, a really, really cool movie. I know this just got an upgrade to Blu-ray, which I haven't picked up yet, and I really, really want it, but it's just a little too pricey for what I want to pay right now for this movie. But I absolutely love this movie. I think that it's very underrated, and I think it was a real strong movie for Craven to put out in 2006. So very, very happy with this movie. I think it's one that you guys should definitely check out. And that's why it's above things like Scream 2. It was just very different. It wasn't the same old. It was very different, and I just really, really enjoyed it. All right, the next one is going to be New Nightmare. New Nightmare, not one of my favorite Elm Street movies. I think it's okay. I think when this came out, it was ahead of its time. I enjoyed it when I saw it in the theater. I thought it was pretty good. It was actually the first Elm Street movie I ever seen in theaters. So at the time, at that age, I was like, oh, that's really cool. But then as I started to get older, I don't like it as much as I did when I first saw it. So that's why it is kind of middle of the road for me when it comes to the Craven movies. I think some people either love this one or hate this one. And I know from a lot of people, they might be like, why isn't this higher on the list? Middle of the road for me when it comes to the Craven titles, because I still think that he's got some bangers in his library. Now, this one is going to be one that I think is going to really shock people, and people are going to probably give me shit for this, but I love this movie, guys. And that is going to be Vampire in Brooklyn. Like, I just love this movie. There's something about it. It just screams 90s. I think that it was such a different take on Dracula and a vampire movie, and it's kind of urban. Like, I really, really like this movie a lot, and I don't think it gets enough credit that it deserves, because honestly, I don't know what there is, besides the fact that Eddie Murphy's playing Dracula or Maximilian or whatever, but I think it's really good. It's got some charm to it. It's gory. I think it's got some suspense to it. I think the atmosphere of this movie is really, really cool. There's just something about it. I like those like kind of mid-90s like urban style horror movies. So Vampire in Brooklyn is actually kind of teetering towards like the top end of my Wes Craven ranking. All right, so I don't even know what the numbers are anymore. I think I had like 20 something on this list. But anyway, we're kind of going towards that top half of my list now, with this next one that may shock people, because I'm sure this is one that not many people have seen or would be this high on their list, but I absolutely love this movie, and it is Summer of Fear. Now, this is that kind of newer Blu-ray that came out from a partner label of Vinegar Syndrome with the slipcover and stuff like that. This movie stars Linda Blair. If you guys have not seen Summer of Fear, it was a made-for-TV movie, but I think this thing rocks. I think it's just a great story. I just really always dug this one a lot, and when this came out, I was actually really excited for it because, again, I've just always been a big fan of it, and I'm a big Linda Blair fan. So this one, I'm sure, is probably not this high on most people's Wes Craven ranking lists, but definitely one you guys should check out if you happen to pass this one by. So we're really getting to the top end of my list now, and this is going to be some really good ones in here, and a lot that I think is still going to draw up some controversy amongst a lot of other horror fans or collectors out there, but the next one on my list is going to be Serpent and the Rainbow. This is such a great movie, super suspenseful, super tense, really, really cool, shot very well. This is the Scream Factory Blu-ray. Man, I think this one is better than maybe people talk about. It's one that just kind of doesn't get talked about a lot. I know there was a lot of controversy about the making of this movie and stuff, but real cool movie, and I think you guys definitely need to check it out. And I'm not sure where this would land for most people when they do their ranking, but for me, this is kind of teetering towards like the top end of my favorites when it comes to Wes Craven. All right, here's another 80s banger. This is Deadly Friend. Man, I love this movie. I've always loved this movie. BB. So you've got a young Christy Swanson in here. A real cool movie. Involves a girl, a super smart kid, a robot. This is one that I think you guys definitely need to check out if you haven't. Such perfect like 80s horror where it's kind of like cheesy but kind of bonkers at the same time. This just kind of fits right in that alley. I've always been a huge fan of Deadly Friend. It was nice to see it finally get an upgrade. All right, now here's one I'm sure people are going to either love or hate that it's this high on my list, but I promise you, I'm still a good person, even though I've been a fan of this movie for a long time, and that is Last House on the Left, the original, the OG. This one is just one that kind of was one of my introductions really into horror because, like I said, my uncle is one who really got me into the horror genre, and this is like his all-time favorite horror movie. So this thing was something that he showed me a lot, a lot of like what went on during the filming. I mean, he has so much stuff that has to do with this movie, and it just is one that I understand nowadays how maybe it can rub people the wrong way when it comes to certain things, but this was just such a product of its time, and I just think the whole revenge aspect of it with the parents and everything like that, like it was just so gritty and grimy, and it's a powerful movie. It's a tough watch for a lot of people, but I have to keep it at the top of my list because it just had been so embedded in my brain, you know, since I really started getting into horror. Now, obviously, the more I watch it now, I feel like it's a little bit harder to watch than when I was 18, 17 years old, 20 years old. But again, for what it is, I like the movie. I think the characters are really good. Big fan of David Hess. He did his own music in this. Like, I have to stand by Last House on the Left and say that it is a good movie overall, especially for when it came out and stuff like that. So that's why it's so high on my list. But I know a lot of people probably are not going to like that it's this high on my list because for whatever reason now, nobody wants to talk about Last House on the Left anymore. But yeah, guys, so again, I'm still a good person, even though Last House on the Left is towards the top of my Craven list. All right, honestly, that could have went in front of this one, believe it or not, just based on, you know, how much I've seen the movie or whatever. I like this movie, and I think it's obviously one of his best. But for me, it's not one. I'm not a huge fanatic like a lot of people are. I like it. I think it's good. I think it did a lot for the genre, and I'm glad to see it still going. And that is going to be Scream. And I'm sure a lot of you are going to be like, why is this not on your top 2 or 3 when it comes to Wes Craven? Again, I love Scream. I'm not obsessed with Scream. I think it really holds up. I think it did a lot for the genre. And again, there's only so many movies that I can choose. As you can see, I'm like in my top 5 right now when it comes to Craven, and Scream is definitely in there. So again, this could be people's number 1. But for me, it's number 5. All right, so we're in my top 5 right now. That was number 5. Number 4 on my list is Shocker! Shocker! Man, I love Shocker. Such a good movie. It's like a heavy metal meets horror. This was supposed to be Wes Craven's answer to like the new Freddy Krueger. This character of Horace Pinker was supposed to be somebody that we were going to see sequels for, and for whatever reason, it just never ended up that way. And man, I just absolutely love this movie. I'm sure a lot of you guys do as well. I don't know if this would be in like your top 4 Wes Craven movies, but it's definitely just a cool ass movie. It rocks. I really love this one. And this and number 3 can kind of teeter back and forth as well with me. And they just kind of have a similar feel. As you can see, I've got the Shocker poster back there. You know, I just think this is just super cool. You know, Mitch Pileggi does a great job. I met him. He signed my Shocker poster. I mean, it's just one that I really, really dig. It just rocks. And that's why it's so high on my Wes Craven ranking list. All right, like I said, this one, my number 4 and number 3 could kind of go back and forth. It's one I just talked about, and that is People Under the Stairs. So again, I just did a full review on this movie, talked about it a little bit, talked about this 4K. I love this movie, guys. I love it. I think it just fits into that like early 90s horror where like the 80s kind of sink into the 90s. So it's really similar to what we were getting over in the 80s. I think this is really, really cool. And like I said, these 2 are 2 of his movies that I just absolutely love. And I think Shocker was the movie that came out right before People Under the Stairs. So to me, he had like a good thing going here. I think he signed like a 3-picture deal or whatever. Shocker was one, People Under the Stairs. So definitely one of Craven's best as far as that time frame, in my opinion. So People Under the Stairs comes in at number 3. All right, we've got 2 left. What could it be? I know you know what one of them is, but my number 2 is one that I'm pretty sure a lot of you might not think it would be this high on my list, but I absolutely love this movie. Always have loved this movie. This was another one that my uncle really put on a pedestal for me growing up. It was like Last House on the Left, Dawn of the Dead, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and this movie right here, and that is the original Hills Have Eyes. Man, I absolutely love this. I don't know what else to say. It's just a cool movie. It's just a cool, creepy movie of these people that live up in the mountains, and it's just really, really good. And again, I think that some people might look at this and be like, in 2023, it's not really a cool watch. Man, it's just so unique. It's so different. And I just think it's such a great film. It's one of my favorites, man. It's one of my top 10 horror movies of all time. I think Arrow did a great job with this edition here. And yeah, Hills Have Eyes falls in at number 2. Now, I'm sure you guys know exactly what's number 1, and it has to be. I mean, again, The Nightmare on Elm Street, the OG, the original, has to be on this list. I mean, how could it not? I mean, it was the introduction to Freddy Krueger, one of the most iconic horror figures of all time. You got this cool Blu-ray steelbook. You've got the old school VHS tape where I saw it for the first time. And man, this just kills it. If you look at my shirt, Freddy is rad. I mean, I love Nightmare on Elm Street. I think the original one is such a great movie. I absolutely love everything about it. So of course, when it comes to Wes Craven, I feel like there is no other answer than the original Nightmare on Elm Street being number one. I know, again, for a lot of people, maybe Scream's number one, but for me, old school original Nightmare on Elm Street is number one when it comes to my Wes Craven ranking. Now, again, I haven't seen anybody do a Wes Craven ranking in my circle of people that I watch. I kind of had the idea after I reviewed People Under the Stairs and I started looking more into like some of his movies because I was going to do a little bit of a marathon with some of his films. And again, guys, if you like this and you saw how I did this list, if you want to do one, it's open. Like, let's go. I want to hear what you guys have to say. Pull out the Craven list. Do your ranking, tag me in it. I would love to see how you guys kind of put these together because like I said, along with someone like John Carpenter, I think they've got just a solid group of movies here. And it was actually kind of hard to organize these into a ranking. I honestly don't hate any of these movies at all. Some are better than others as far as movies. Some movies are better than other movies that I had lower on my tier list here. But again, I think when you really look at Craven's library of films, he has a strong library here. And it's stronger than I thought it was until I really started to dissect it and be like, oh my God, like there isn't a lot of turds in here, really. Like even his TV movies are actually pretty enjoyable. So guys, I'm curious, if you want to do a Wes Craven ranking list, put one up and tag me in it so I can check it out. But guys, thank you so much. Let me know down below, what would you have changed on my list? If you don't have a YouTube channel, put your ranking down below. I would love to see it. And again, I'm curious what you guys think of some of the spots that I put these in, because like I said, I'm sure it's going to ruffle some feathers here. But guys, this was fun. I really liked doing this. So maybe John Carpenter will be next. You never know. So thank you so much for checking this out. Give it a like. It really helps the channel out. And I appreciate all your guys' support as always. And this is Garrett at Born2beRad. And like always, stay rad.